All right, we are live. Hi, everybody. We are live. I have my really good friend Kathy Klotz-Guest here. We're going to get started in just a moment. And if you happen to see this, you know that we're going to be having a conversation about biases. It's something that you may or may not want to talk about, but you may want to get in and listen in. So if you are here, please comment to let us know that you're here. Say where you're from. Tell us hi. Hit those hearts, the clappy hands, the little all those things, and let's get started. Hi,
Yeah.
Kathy.
Hey, Gary. Hey, everybody. Clappy hands. Clappy
Yes, right.
hands.
Yes, let us know where
Yeah.
you're from, and just know that
Yeah.
it is a delay, so it may take a moment before we get to you. But it's our friend RKA is on there. Wave to RKA, Kathy.
Hello, RKA. What's up, girl? What's up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
time to have a conversation about biases. Reason why I wanted to talk about biases, we are disclaimer, we are not bias experts. that is not what we're about. But we have experienced bias. We all have biases. My good friend Kathy, she has spoke on numerous panels about biases, and I think it be great to have a conversation, talk about the work that we do and how
Yeah.
we can help people with
Yeah.
that situation.
That's right. That's why we're experts only on TV. We don't play. We're not in real life, but actually, we kind of are in a way because uh, I've known Gary forever. We go back a while as improvisers, and you say the word bias, and people are like, they want to run for the exits because it's like,
Yes.
hey, everybody, let's talk about bias, and people are like, oh, hell no. I mean, nobody wants to talk about it. And the reason, though, it affects a lot of the work that we do, and it affects, I think, the work that you all do, is that when people feel not heard, that their voices don't matter, they shut down and we don't get their best ideas. So the reason, I just to clarify and why Gary and I, have such an interest in it is for the work that we do with teams and with, corporate, it's if bias is interfering at all with how people feel, they're going to hold back and we're just not going to get the best out of them. And that's sort of something that Gary and I have, and we've tried to use kind of humor and improv and things like that to make it safer to talk about. I mean, it's not fun, but the good news is everybody does have it. So it's not like, nobody's keeping score and it's like, that Bob over there has bias, but Nancy doesn't.
Nancy has no biases.
Nancy has no biases, and we all have it. So if we can talk about it playfully and without judgment, I think we can make a difference. And I think just to frame it a little bit, because not
yes,
experts.
yes, we are not, and it's so interesting, the whole idea of like what a bias is. And we, as Kathy mentioned, we all have them. If you break it down on a psychological level, it is what's kept us alive for centuries after centuries. It is just our biology, our brain's way of just preserving energy. Our brain's number one job is to keep you alive. So if it can, and our brain is amazingly well at understanding patterns. And once it knows what a pattern is, you're not going to your brain's not going to activate on the same level that it would had you were doing something for the first time. So if you've seen something over and over and over again, like for example, think about walking. If you had to consciously think about every muscle in your body walking, it would be so overwhelming. But you could do it without thinking about it. Matter of fact, you could do it while texting, putting on makeup, all these other things. And that's how biases are formed, is that it's a blind spot. It's our brain thought things were one way, and then, over time, things have shifted and we still respond the exact same way. And it's gotten us into trouble. And it's one of these things, as an intelligent business person, manager, employee, you probably want to do your best. And would you agree that if there was something that was keeping you from doing your best, you would want to know about it and maybe work on it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I would.
Yeah. So Kathy, what, like we since we're not bias experts, like what are some biases that you've experienced? It could just be whatever, just so we can just put it out there and then talk about, and I'll say some of the ones that I've experienced, and then we can talk about some ways that people can identify them, especially using some fun and playful methods. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Let's make it fun. Well, and it's hard because I think bias looks a lot. There's a lot of ways to have a bias. I mean, it can be as simple as a creative bias, like always doing the same things over and over again. Or it can be a creative bias that says, well, engineering, they're engineers. They don't have anything to offer creatively. It can be a job bias. It can be an occupation bias. It can be a bias about the introvert in the room. It can be a bias towards, certainly gender or race. And a lot of times those happen at an unconscious level. We call that the unconscious bias factor, because a lot of times we may not even realize that's happening. And so those operate at a threshold that is usually under our radar. And so we may not even realize that that's happening. We may not, I remember when I was working, running marketing in tech, I noticed, because there were fewer women in the room and it was mostly dominated by men, that when women would speak up, women would get talked over. And I don't think the men realized they were doing it. But that'll shut down people from even trying to be heard. And that's the hard part, is that if that goes unchecked for whatever reason, and again, it's usually pretty innocent, people aren't doing it necessarily intentionally, people will stop trying to participate in the conversation and you lose people, So I think those are some of the biases that I think, we all have to be kind of careful of. We have to be careful about maybe making a judgment about somebody's background.
Yeah.
True.
Or their ability. Some of the things, Kathy talked, she talked about a wide gamut, and, just to chime in and add to that, some of the biases are like, sometimes like we poke fun and we, and it's some stuff that we talk around in the office of like, oh, people in finance, oh my gosh, they're so uptight. They're not creative.
They don't know anything about creativity.
Yeah. Or those creatives, oh my gosh, they're always, they're always playing foosball and doing creative things, and they have low attention spans, Yeah. So, while we're talking, we want this to be interactive. There is a lag, so forgive me if it takes us a minute to get to you. But if you have any sort of feedback on biases that you've experienced or anything like that, please put them in the comments, and we will do our best to get at them. But the whole thing about biases is that it's something that we do unconsciously, and it might have happened because of how things were in the past. Whatever the case may be, but it's a blind spot. And before we went live, I was, talking to Kathy. I said, it's like the equivalent of me walking around with food in my mouth or my zipper down, and I don't know about it, and everyone sees it. And they're just like, oh, that's just Gary. Gary's the guy with the food in his mouth.
I love an analogy. I liken it to ladies, y'all know this. Like when we're wearing heels and we come out of the women's restroom and there's like a tissue paper, like on it, and there's like toilet paper. Somehow it's on our shoe, and you're having full-on conversations with other people, and nobody points it out to you, which I think is a failure of friendship. That's just not right.
Yeah.
Like if I see that, I'm like, oh, hold on. You got some toilet paper on your shoe. Like that cannot stand. That's just a good litmus test for friendship. So I agree with you. I kind of, when people know you well, I think if you do it with love and in the right way, there's a non-threatening way maybe to kind of, raise awareness, Yeah.
Agreed. And so to that point, when someone calls some of these things out, sometimes we get defensive.
Yeah.
We think, that we're like, something's wrong with us or something like that. And so we get defensive and oh my God, how dare you, and stuff like that.
Right.
However, if it's done with love, and we can talk about, some ways to do it and some ways for us to be champions of other people, so that they're not seen in a certain way, we'll do that in a moment. But if it's done with love, then we can learn.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I want is to go the whole day with some food in my mouth and people just like assume like, what, let's just not say anything about that.
They're like, exactly, awkward. They're like, are you going to tell him? Are you going to tell him? But you also don't want to be the hall monitor. Like, nobody likes a hall monitor, right? You don't want to be the hall monitor that's like walking around with the pencil and be like, Gary, twice now I've seen broccoli in your teeth, so I'm going to have to write you a little. You're going to have to go to the principal's office. So like it can't be done in that like kind of judgy way. Yeah. I think that's the hard part about bias is that I think we all feel it. Everybody's felt it. We've all done it because we're human. We all have biases. So congratulations, you're human.
You're human.
And it's not about beating anybody up about it. It's not about beating yourself up about it. I think it's about recognizing how things like that can get in the way. And, Gary and I have talked and I'm sure everybody listening here has seen where maybe a bias that somebody else maybe didn't realize could have an impact. It could keep ideas from being, surfaced. It could keep people from wanting to participate in brainstorming because they feel like, well, my ideas aren't going to be heard anyway. Or it can keep, people of color, women and, people with disabilities or our LGBTQ brothers and sisters off of stages because, for whatever reason, we just don't see, and it can happen. So it can have small effects and it can have like, unfortunately, unconscious bias can have big effects too.
Yeah, and one thing I want to share, this happened in high school, and it's really silly, but it really, talks about that just because things were one way at one time doesn't mean that's always that way. So we had a group of friends that we always hung out together. We always did everything together. And there was this good friend of mine, his name is Graham, and there was one time when he talked about how he did not like, we used to go to this place called Godfather's Pizza. I don't even think they're around anymore for lunch. They had because we had the ability to leave campus for lunch, and they had an amazing lunch buffet. And I remember going with Graham once, and he talked about how he didn't like it. And so we were all thinking about like, this a smaller subset of the group. We said, hey, let's go to Godfather's for lunch for the buffet. And someone said, should we invite Graham? And I just out of the blue just said, oh no, he doesn't like Godfather's pizza. And so we didn't invite Graham, only to come to find out he heard about it and was very upset. Like he was just upset that one, he didn't get invited. We all went. We had an amazing time. And then two, his good friend Gary just said, oh, Graham doesn't like pizza. And then, he brought it up to me and I talked about it. It was one of those things. It was kind of awkward, but we had a conversation, and then it became the joke that Graham doesn't like pizza. And I tell that story just to say that, I just, to be honest, I don't even know why I blurted it out. Like granted, it was like over like 25 years ago. But nonetheless, I thought, oh, Graham doesn't like that. And it wasn't that I was doing it out of spite or anything. I just was just saying what I thought. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's how always things are. And so, he brought it to my attention. And then I was like not aware of it. I'm like, oh, all right, cool. And then we had a conversation, and it was uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong. But then it was something that had it not been brought to my attention, there could have been this tension, and I could have kept going on. Anytime there was pizza, no, let's not invite Graham.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. And poor Graham got his feelings hurt. He felt left out. You felt bad. And it's good that, you sort of surfaced it. And I love that you did that example too, because as we've said before, it's like bias can be, there's so many ways to like have a bias or not see something. And I think when we talk about bias today, we think, age, gender, race, all those other things, but it can be, all some of the smaller things we've talked about. It can be information bias. It can be I don't ever ask, Bob for his opinion because Bob's introverted. And so then I don't ask Bob, but Bob has good ideas. It's just that he needs support in a meeting to bring up his ideas because everybody talks over him. And so it can be all those different things, right? Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a few things I want to point out, we sort of talked about them, but it's great to just state them as a way to combat biases.
Yeah.
Because it's not a bad thing. It is what it is. Like, I like to come from a place of non-judgment awareness. It's just something that happens.
Yeah.
And if you're in the place of wanting to improve, you are willing to, do the hard work. And one of the things is to make the unconscious conscious.
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't just assume that people even realize that they're doing it.
Yeah.
And you need to do it in a friendly and loving way. But as quickly as possible, as Kathy said, you don't want to be the hall monitor that is just like calling people out, because then you're going to be, people might not receive it as well if you're always calling out people's stuff because we're sensitive, we're sensitive beings, and these are sometimes uncomfortable conversations. But it's important to call it out, and a way to do that is talk about how. Take it out of the person and talk about how it affects either performance or it affects people's morale or something like that, so that they realize you did this action and here was the effect of that.
Yeah. And also in the aggregate, like how an action in the aggregate, if a lot of people do it, can have real impact. I always say this, and I know Gary and I've talked about this ad nauseum, and it's because we say a lot in improv. It's like intent and impact are different things. You may not intend to do something, but that doesn't mean you don't have an impact. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people where it's like, well, I didn't mean to. And it's like, totally get that. Totally get it. And that's where it's like, sometimes even if we don't mean to have an impact, because we don't intend to do it, we can still have an impact. And I think that's where, we start getting into big aggregate social issues of equality and, all that other stuff, because in the aggregate, well, a lot of people didn't intend to, but over time in the aggregate, guess what? We're here now and we got a problem. So but we can't solve that here. We can't.
I know. Here. Right.
But,
but we can start baby steps, and it starts by making the unconscious thing conscious. That way, if it's something like, for example, say I'm the person that's talking over someone. I may not realize that I'm doing that, and then having a conversation of the impact that my actions are, then I can start to be conscious of it. And then when it happens, I'm like, you know what? You're right. There it is. I see it.
Yeah.
So that is the first thing. And Kathy mentioned the other thing that I want to point out is that sometimes you need to be the ally or the champion, because, whether it's a gender, color, all these other sort of situations where they need help and they need allies, for them to do the work all of themselves it's a lot. We need to be the person that makes it comfortable for everyone, to feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and it can be anything that you're in, like whether it's marketing or brainstorming or whatever, and you see you're not everybody is contributing. The quiet people aren't saying anything. One of the things I like to do is when I'm working with, teams doing creative exercises or brainstorming or whatever, it's like, and I see somebody not contributing, I'm the person that's like, you know what? You've been really quiet over there. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? And at least give them a chance to jump in. But that's where notice, somebody, notice who's talking, notice who isn't talking, maybe notice who isn't getting a chance to talk, or, invite them in. So be the conversation starter, or I hate to say, like the so don't be the hall monitor, but it's really making sure that everybody gets a chance. And it can be as simple as, hey, I know you have great ideas and you haven't said much. What do you think?
Yeah. I love that. And it just shows that you have each other's back. Kathy and I were both improvisers, and one of the tenets of improvisers, well, two of them: one, make your partner look amazing, and then two, have each other's back, because we is greater than me. It's all about the ensemble.
Yeah.
So if you are living that, that means that you are looking after everyone.
Yeah.
I remember I had an intern at this marketing agency that I was a director for, and this person had amazing ideas. However, a bias is, interns should be seen but not heard. Those are some of the things. Or they're in school, like what ideas could they possibly have? All these other things. There's so many.
Right. You're an intern. Know your place.
Yes. When I was an intern like you, I would be lucky to have a place in this room. Like.
Right. But now I wear a monocle and I'm elitist. So go get some coffee. And it can just be small little things like that. And great ideas come from anywhere. And one of the things that it can just be the simplest things, like I was leading a brainstorming session with a client a week ago, and we're coming up with kind of fun concepts and humorous ideas, trying to come up with new campaign ideas. And when we allow people to, it can be as simple as when somebody, doesn't like an idea and says, well, that won't work. Just backing up this idea of don't shoot ideas down till you're done. Because if enough of that is done, people are going to stop contributing ideas. And so it doesn't hurt when somebody breaks the rules. Again, it's not being really hall monitor in this case, but it's like, if there's a friendly way, like have an agreed upon rule where maybe you throw a koosh ball at somebody in a playful way when they violate a rule, or maybe you hit a button and do something fun. So that's lighthearted, and it's not like, all right, Nancy, I'm gonna have to write you out for being a toy, But it's a lighthearted, fun way to let people know that all right, we violated our rule, which is no, don't shoot down ideas yet, because people can forget and start evaluating ideas before they're even out on the table, and then people stop trying. It's our own, and that's creative bias, right? We just have the sense of what we think is creative, and somebody else's ideas aren't creative. Well, we don't know that yet. We don't know that. Gary and I know that a lot of times ideas aren't formed individually. We create them together. So in improv, we yes and an idea. You might have half the puzzle, I have half the puzzle. Then we create something that never would have existed, but for the fact that we created it real time together because we listened. So it can be that creative bias, that we have to just get past,
I agree 100%. And it was that intern that I mentioned, it was like my mission to help that intern find a place. And I would position them. So I studied a lot about the sense of where to sit in the meetings. And so I made sure that when I brought the intern with me, I put them at the left of me. Because I was the one who was leading it. And so whoever is to the left is seen as credible. And I would make a point to call on them specifically and ask for their input. And by doing that, people, like as the leader, as the person that was running the meeting, I was setting the precedent that all ideas matter. And then two, it helped build that person's confidence. And we would do silly things like, Kathy mentioned, we would have like agreements in meetings, and we would do some of these silly improv games, before, as a way to like build rapport and get everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
But it creates what Kathy and I talk a lot about, is psychological safety, where people feel like they can bring any idea, knowing that all ideas are welcome, and knowing that, we're going to create something that is greater than the sum of each of the individual people's parts.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Psychological safety is such a critical concept. And I know it's sort of like in vogue. Everyone's like, oh my God, psychological safety. Have you read that yet? It's so in vogue, but it's so important. It's so important because you think about, if anybody feels their ideas are unimportant, or they feel unheard or invisible, or not seen, they just stop contributing. Think about all the ideas you're missing out on. Like, that's the thing that's saddest to me, is that when we have these filters, you are missing a whole bunch of perspective. And I can't imagine, if like, you would be super uncomfortable if half your team wasn't contributing, if only half the team was sitting there and the other half felt invisible. They might as well just get up and leave the meeting, because you're not getting anything useful from them. And I can't imagine. That is such a sad state of affair for them. It's poor engagement for them. They don't want to be there. But it's also what a sad waste of talent. Like, that to me is the biggest issue with biases. It's the waste of talent and the waste of ideas that we're not getting to.
Yeah, I agree. And it starts to, because I don't think there's any company out there that doesn't think that we welcome all ideas. We want everyone to be innovative. However, they're not congruent, and they don't set up an environment where people or all ideas can take place.
Right.
It's all ideas if you're in marketing and of this type of situation. Measly person in finance, my ideas get shut down, and you start to get complaints, because if you're hearing, no, that sucks, this idea is better over and over again, who would want to put up with that?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because like, I think no one's going to tell you, what, Gary, I feel psychologically unsafe today.
Yes, right?
Tell you that. I think you just have to be smart and looking for when people stop engaging, and you have to like ask yourself why, and maybe pull them aside, or you've got to really do some deep thought, because I think by the time people often find out that a culture is psychologically unsafe, or a team or a situation, the people have left. And they never told you that because they didn't think you could handle it. So it's one of those things where it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're not going to tell you that they're psychologically unsafe there, because you make it psychologically unsafe.
I know, right?
And then people are like, "Oh, why didn't you tell me that?"
Hello.
Hello.
I'm just saying.
Just saying.
Yes. And that's why.
Yeah, I'm going to hire a skywriter next time to tell you that as my butt is leaving the door, right through the door. So yeah.
And it's we have a comment from Michelle Fernandez. She says sometimes people aren't aware of their behaviors, so policies might be needed to transform those unconscious biases. Yeah. And you're absolutely correct. And I feel like that's like a really good segue into like some of the stuff that we do with improv.
Yeah.
Because the work of improv creates that safe space. We have these principles that allow us to create and collaborate and fail and all these other things. Yeah. And that, if you follow the principles of improvisation and really live them and step into it, you can't help but to create a safe space where all ideas can be shared. And no, it doesn't mean that it's going to be rainbows and unicorns and butterflies.
Right.
That's not, and everything's going to be perfect and you're going to, hit a home run every time. But you will create a space where people feel comfortable, one, being themselves, and two, calling things out, and, three, making mistakes and not feeling like, it's the end of the world.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you're right. And I love the way you said that. Because I was laughing. I'm thinking squatty potty. It's not all going to be rainbow. Like, some might be duty, but it's going to be cool because it's going to be squatty potty duty. And that's beautiful. But that's it. It's really training people to give their best ideas. And so if you do follow that, you will change things. I like what, Michelle is saying about policies. You may find yourself having to have policies, but you also have to have enforcement. And I think a lot of the problems with policies is that they're never enforced. And so enforcement can't be like a HR, hall monitor thing. I think enforcement has to be in our team, in our group. We agree to treat each other this way. So in a meeting, for example, or in our work, if somebody's not doing what they're supposed to do, what's the rule of engagement that we can, maybe the first rule of engagement is to say something to the person individually. And if nothing happens, then maybe in the team meeting, you can have you have other people to help back you up and reinforce it. And it has to be some kind of way to reinforce it, but the playful route.
Yeah.
Gary and I are firm believers in it. If there's a way to do it with playfulness, because again, it's not about shaming. Some people are just jerks, but for the people who just, they're just jerks. But for the people who are accidental jerks, and we're all accidental jerks at some point, they just need a friendly reminder, right? And so I think you just need a team agreement on what the rules of engagement are and how you're going to behave.
Yes. Yeah, you bring up a really good point. And I believe it was in Brene Brown's most recent book. She talked about that, of living into these values and into these agreements. And what does it mean to you? Yeah. If the agreement is X, what does that look like? And in the spirit of play, and this is why we like play so much, this is where you can get playful with it. You can make it a little bit more fun. You can role play it.
Yeah.
Because when you play something, you are in this sort of protected state where the stakes don't matter. You suspend all prior belief for the rules of the game. And the cool thing is, as you're playing, you're learning, and then you are developing these skills so that when it comes time to actually have those tough conversations, you've already practiced it. Your unconscious mind is like, oh yeah, I've done this before. Not saying it's going to be perfect, but it's going to be better than if I were to just tell you, this is how you have an uncomfortable conversation. Take notes and go and do it. And you wait till the stakes are high to do it. No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. How we behave with low stakes trains us for how to behave with high stakes. So practice with low stakes. But I think it's really also important that there's the backup, right? And again, to Gary's point, we have this make your partner look good, and we have each other's back. So for example, if the same person's always speaking up, they may forget, they just get excited. And maybe that's where it can't always be the one person that speaks up and enforces the rules, because then that person has the unfortunate burden of being seen as the hall monitor, right? And it should be a shared burden, right?
Yes.
If somebody needs something, hey, we agreed, just a reminder, we agreed that if anybody goes over time, we were going to put $1 in the fund for free lunch, in the pizza fund. Right. And so that way there isn't just one person that's doing the heavy burden of being the bad guy, policing or whatever. It's a shared burden. And in that way it feels more uneven versus everyone's like, damn it, every time we invite Sharon to that meeting, all she does is cut us off. Damn it, Sharon. Stop it. And, then everyone's all mad at Sharon, but it shouldn't be Sharon's burden to be the gatekeeper. So I think it has to be in a playful way, and it has to be leaders enforce it too. So one of the things that, and Gary and I talk about this all the time offline, and it's like, if we're going to have an agreement, a set of rules, then the leader of your team has to abide by the same rules everybody else does. There isn't two sets of rules. Everybody abides by the same rules.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes. And to that point, Kathy, are there any games that you like to play that helps to uncover biases or helps to eliminate biases? Anything that comes to mind?
I think a lot of times bias is one of those things where it's games that are self-revelatory are really helpful, because sometimes people just don't know. So, I sort of think that if you've reached the age of 30 or 35, biases are like a U-Haul truck. You kind of sort of know what's in there. Like you should
right?
know. Like if you're wearing a name tag that says, Kathy, and to work, like by the time you're 35, like there's just certain things you should know about your own idiosyncrasies, and just have a sense of self-awareness, right? You should. But it's so true that sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
And so a lot of times, just playfully, I might ask people to, all right, how many of you, show of hands, how many of you have felt unheard or unseen? How many, and usually it's everybody to a person. How many of you have felt maybe unseen based, if you want to get heavy, by race or gender or age or just, being introverted or maybe by job title or whatever. And I think pretty much you start to see that everybody feels at some point that we haven't been seen or heard or, and so, it doesn't ask people to reveal what, the times of bias or what they've done to other people. But it is important to get people to understand, all right, you've had those biases. All right. Something's happened to you. How many of you have ever had it pointed out to you? And then maybe you get a show of hands, maybe not. But then you start to explore, well, if everybody has felt bias, everybody's probably had a bias that's hurt somebody else. And then you start to have empathy. And there's another exercise that I know, Gary, you and I have talked about a while ago, which is called Just Like Me. Have you done the Just Like Me exercise?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Yes.
It's a really good one. And it's just a very simple empathy exercise where you might get in pairs or you might develop a profile and you just talk about, well, you find the commonalities of the person or maybe multiple people you're in a group with. Well, you know what? Nancy has a family just like me. She's a mom. She's just like me. She's pulled in a lot of directions. She doesn't always get back to me, but just like me, she's doing her best. Just like me. So you start to, rather than look at the differences among you, you start to realize there's more in common and you start to build empathy. Yeah.
Great point. And like once you start to realize that we're more alike than apart, then you start to have that sort of bond. Our good friend David on here says it seems that people are threatened by others who are just not like them. And on the surface, you may think, oh, that person is not like me. But then if you play this simple but powerful game that Kathy's talking about, you can find out that we actually have more in common, than we have apart.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Just Like Me, it's called Just Like Me, and you can even Google it. And there's like a whole improv encyclopedia of games. And I think Just Like Me is a great way to just, when you're maybe frustrated, and to just reframe it like, okay, maybe they're doing their best and they don't see it. And it starts from a place of understanding. And when you establish a couple things in common, it just makes it easier to just have those conversations and to be able to move forward. So,
yep. Agreed.
Yeah. What do you like to play? What do you like? I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
Oh yeah, no worries. One of the things, I keep going back to the whole thing of we sometimes have this bias on, people in certain positions may or may not be as creative as others. And, it just happens. And so as a way to eliminate that, and before I tell you the game, I'm going to tell you something really powerful that I heard. And it was, I forgot what symphony did this, so forgive me for not knowing that, but they realized that they didn't have a lot of women and people of color in the symphony, and they wanted to rectify that situation. And so they had an open tryout, and then they did the tryouts. And after the tryouts, they still didn't have a lot of people of color or women. And so they did something very powerful, and that changed like that. It didn't, pretty much the same people tried out. So, it's not like they got all of a sudden better people that came out. They did a blind audition. So the people that were choosing had no idea who the person was. All they heard was them playing. And just by doing a blind audition and taking all these other things out of the equation, they naturally more people, and realize that there are things that didn't realize that were coming into play and blinding their decisions. And so, knowing that, again, you may not think you have a bias, but sometimes things that you don't even realize are influencing you. And so this game is a really powerful game to do that. And if you have a thing where people need to, give ideas, one, it allows even the most quiet people to give ideas right on sticky notes.
Yes.
And then mix them up, and then put them up on the whiteboard or something like that, and give everyone like 3 dots or something like that. They can go and put all votes on one sticky note or mix it around. That way you have no idea whose idea is what, and it's just all anonymous. So what are your thoughts on that, Kathy?
I love that. In fact, I just did that, and I love that because well, Gary's my twin. We're just on the same wavelength.
We are.
I love that. I love that a lot because you're so right. A lot of bias is where ideas come from. Like, especially if it happens to the best of us. If we maybe have an antagonistic relationship with somebody just because of whatever reason, we may, just because we're mad about one thing, we may dismiss what that person says, and it might be a brilliant idea, but we just don't see it. So I love this idea of anonymous notes, and then you vote and you add on, and you can add on ideas to go broad or deeper, and then vote on those ideas. And it's all anonymous. And I love that because it takes our own human filter, and we're all human. We all have it. Whatever we're feeling that we don't even realize maybe we have, it just takes that right out of it. Now, it's not going to reveal your filter to you. It's not going to reveal your bias, but it will get you to better ideas that are less inspired by your personal feelings about the person who generated the idea. And I think that's a great way to go.
Yes.
Yeah. And brainwriting.
Any other game?
Yeah, brainwriting. It's a lot like what you just said. Brainwriting, for those people who might not know, there's a great exercise called brainwriting, and it's very similar to what Gary described. And brainwriting is, for a certain amount of time, everyone's got the same color, and it's very important that everyone have the same color. So you can't be like, okay, Marsha's got pink notepad, so everything that Marsha does, you got to have the same color. But you basically, you can write out ideas, and what you do, write out ideas, and then put it in an envelope and pass it around. Give people 5 minutes, then say pass left. And then the person who gets it sees a Post-it, one idea per Post-it. And whatever idea sparks another idea, they write onto that Post-it or add another Post-it and build and build on that idea. Then they write for 5 minutes. They seal the envelope, pass left. You keep passing. And what it end up happening is you'll have at the end of it, you open up the envelope, you've got a bunch of Post-its that are connected because somebody everybody yes-anded a really good idea. And you'll see some ideas only have 1 or 2 Post-its. But by doing that, you'll kind of have seen which ideas spark the imagination of everybody anonymously, just by that. And you do it for maybe an hour, half an hour, and there you go. Brainwriting.
Boom. Yes. I love that.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah. Take these ideas, use them, report back, let us know. Because at the end of the day, our goal here is not to say anyone is better than anyone else. If you've been paying attention to the whole 43 minutes that we've been talking, we say we all have our own biases, and the faster that you can identify what they are and rectify them, the better off you're going to be, the deeper the relationships you're going to create, an environment where people want to be. And that's, at the end of the day, we want that feeling of belonging. Yeah.
For sure. And just to add on to that, I think the creative bias is probably the single biggest one that we see. I think that really is where ideas come from, who's generating them, a belief that maybe they should come from certain people, or even a bias about title and hierarchy, that somebody's ideas are better because they have a higher status or a higher title. Not necessarily the case at all. Great ideas come from everywhere. Yes. Can I tell you a story?
Please, and then I will tell you a story.
Okay.
Please, Kathy, go.
So we have a mutual friend, again, Gary and I, lots of mutual friends.
Yes.
Sammy Weegent, and he told this really great story about like the Flamin' Hot Cheetos. That's the story I was going to tell. Yeah, Flamin' Hot Cheetos. And the Flamin' Hot Cheetos is this idea that was started because a janitor in the company, Latino, noticed that a lot of the flavors really weren't inspired or connected to sort of the spicier foods that his community that he liked. And he actually one day was able to speak to the CEO. He thought, well, why not? I should say something. So he tried different flavors and he came up with this idea. And he went to the CEO, and the CEO, instead of saying, well, I'm sorry, you're this person, you don't have this title, you're not in marketing. The CEO said, oh my God, tell me more. I love it. And he yes-anded the idea. And this gentleman, former janitor, now marketing executive at the company, was able to go back and then experiment with full support of the CEO to explore this other area. And try new flavors, spicy flavors, until, ta-da, the flaming hot Cheeto was born. And it's all because the CEO was smart enough to know a great idea comes from anywhere in the organization. An idea is a great idea no matter where it comes from. And he yes-anded it. He said yes and to that idea. Like, oh, now we have flaming hot Cheetos, man.
Yeah. And then some. Like we have all kinds of flavors that like pave the way to all these additional flavors. What is beautiful about all of this is that one, that janitor barely had an elementary school, sort of education. And two, on the CEO's point, he didn't just talk the talk; he walked the walk. They said all ideas. We want you all to think like CEOs. We want all these ideas. And far too often, I hear about situations where they say, "Oh, bring us your ideas," and I, have people come to me and say, well, they don't really mean it.
Yeah.
So.
That's a big one. I see that way too often. And I know you all do too. I'm sure people watching this feel that way too. And that's the hardest part about it is that that disconnect of what the company says its values are and then how they're practiced.
Yes.
After spending 15 years in corporate, I hear that and I would say that's a great place to maybe start. If the values are strong, even when the company veers, if the value is strong enough, the company will want to get back on track and start to practice it.
Agreed.
And bring it up. Start there, but it takes everybody sort of being kind of the enforcer, right?
Yep.
I'm the enforcer. Psh, psh, psh.
Yeah.
It's like a Transformer thing. I don't know why.
Yes.
But everybody's job to look out for great ideas and to look out for each other. And even when somebody has an idea that might not be viable, to say, hey, I love the way that you engaged in creative thinking. And we may not be able to use that idea, but we want to nurture the creative thinking that you have. And that's everybody's job. Make people feel safe. Here's what you do. Yep. Make people feel safe to come to you and give you ideas. You can't control what other people do. Show up as somebody that people feel safe to be around and to speak up to.
Agreed. Yes. And, we use play as the medium for building connections and trust and amazing ideas. But use whatever's comfortable for you. And I feel like that's a great bow. Thank you, Kathy, for wrapping that on there.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michelle said she is excited to try some of these tools. So thank you, Michelle. About you. And thank you for everyone who was chiming in. We got David's provided a lot of stuff. Gregory, I haven't seen you in forever. Hello, what's happening? And then all the rest of you that have been watching, whether it's the live or the replay, leave some comments. Let us know, are we off base? What are your thoughts? Is there any situation you've experienced? So
just like me, Kathy's hair is all over the place, just like me. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Let us know. Yeah, what would be cool too is if you guys go and use this stuff, let Gary and I know how that worked out for you. I'd love to. I'm sure we both would really love to know how that worked for you.
Exactly. And so as we say goodbye, Kathy, how can people find you? If they want to let you know that they found they tried some of this stuff, please take a moment, tell us about you, your business, where we can find you and stuff like that, because I want all my guests to get all the love.
Aw. Well, I am the Kathy Klotz-Guest too. That's actually my married name. So I am a guest and I am a guest. True. I am. No, it's true. It's just for anybody confused out there. It is my married name. I get that all the time. Why does this say guest? I'm at a conference. Why? Well, because guest is my married name. Oh, I thought you were a guest. Well, I am.
I am.
But you can go to keepingithuman.com. You can also find me there on LinkedIn. Reach out, say hello. Would love to chat. You can find me on the other socials at Kathy Klotz-Guest on Twitter, Facebook, all that other stuff. On Insta, I'm at Klotz-Guest. So I look forward to hearing back from people.
Yay! All right, cool. I'm going to post that in the comments. But Kathy, thank you so much
Thank you
for coming on. It's always a delight. We're gonna have to touch on this even more because it's such a, we just barely did this. It's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much to unpack in such a short period of time.
Let's do another one. Maybe we do games. Maybe we do some live.
Yeah, next time. Yeah, do you guys want to see some games? Let us know. That will be fun.
Yeah, for sure. Gary, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yes. So, all right. Till next time, if you have any other tips you want us to cover, let me know. Put in a comment. We see you all next time. Bye.